Thank you very much. Okay, morning all. So as we've been chatting along with our journey, which started on the first presentation, where we started to look at the journey that's taken me to get where I am, and then running through to chatting about the mentors and the importance of how mentors can be beneficial to us within our profession, and also within our mental health space. So we're continuing that journey today on our road to a mental health and just a mind-focused transformation. So we're going to keep learning, keep exploring, keep chatting together and interacting. So today's presentation is going to be a little bit more fluid than the previous two. And so that's really where we're going to be exploring a lot of different dynamics around the road to the changes of vicarious transformation and how we can move forward positively into the future and a headspace and a mindset for us as individuals and also for us as a profession. Just to recap again that the personal medical disclaimer, but it's also the last two bullets at the bottom also very important, that this presentation might not address all the questions you may have regarding your specific mental and health conditions, and always consult a healthcare provider and explore related resources to ensure the advice is appropriate for you. We will also, in the last closeout presentation in July, be focusing a lot more on those last two areas, the tools, resources, etc. But once again, within the mentor space, you'd be welcome to reach out to any of the mentors within the program if you want to discuss or seek further guidance or counsel on that. So just recapping as to how we got where we are today, as outlined in our first presentation, where we were going to be going next was looking at a work-life balance, coping mechanisms, mentoring, which we've unpacked, the role empathy can play, health and life coaching. That was our closeout slide in the last session. And we're going to be attacking some of those bullets today. And so we're going to be focusing on how we can address and discuss and share our experiences around that. And you just also need to remember to carry over from the last presentation that emotions should be doorways, not barriers. That we need to approach our emotional responses, and even the responses we have during the presentation today, if we are reflecting back on our career or reflecting back on past cases or incidents, our responses to that must be with curiosity, not judgment, and not self-judgment either. This will allow us to turn our most challenging moments into new discovered paths. And that should be, we should try to keep that as a mental, emotional mindset through the course of this presentation, and also moving forward beyond this presentation. Within the mentor space as well, we've been unpacking some of the needs analysis that have come out of from the mentors presentation, and we can see there two key points that correlate with what we're busy working through today and have been processing, and that is the work-life balance and also emotional mental health improvement. And that's what we're going to be addressing today and going forward beyond that, to be able to allow us within both this Coffee and Cases Thursday CME space and in the ongoing mentor space and mentee space to look at, besides all the other areas that have been flagged that people want to get advice and guidance on, but also on these mental health flags that have been raised in there. So that's where we're going to be focusing today. So if we look at our agenda today, we're going to spend some time understanding stress, looking at an overview of the unexpected physical symptoms of stress, which some of us might or might not know, and just doing a bit of a deep dive into some of the areas of stress and how they're impacting our physical health as opposed to our mental health, which is also very will be reassuring for some of us when we begin to understand the close correlation between how mental stress can impact on our physical health and well-being, both in the acute and in the chronic phase of both aspects of that. We're then going to start spending some time moving to learning to be more compassionate. And we spoke about that last week, that compassion and empathy begins with us, with the individual, with the practitioner. And we can then, if we can be kind to ourselves and gentle with ourselves and our own challenges, we can then carry that over to our patients and our colleagues, our staff, our management, and even our family and friends outside of the workspace. Because we need to be very clear that everything that impacts us is not only impactful within the workspace, but sometimes even more impactful in the after workspace, in the home space, in the private life space. We're going to spend some time as well looking at the heart-brain balance, the empathy of how we balance this out, and then closing out with some more encouraging thoughts for us to focus on and look at. It's also important that we also understand that we often say that stress, and if we look at the negative aspects of that. Apologies if this graphic is a little bit blurred on your screens. Battle to find a non-blurry graphic on this particular one. But so we understand the good stress, and we work on that good stress at work in terms of it keeps us motivated, it keeps us focused. But we also need to understand that even within a workspace, if we are working in a very high stress environment for a very long time with a patient for a prolonged period, be it a couple of hours, and some of us working remotely have had the unfortunate task of being a person alone with a patient for a day or two or three. That level of stress, and when it starts off as being a good vibe with a patient, can also then in that time create an acute stress moment for us as a practitioner, even within the workspace treating a patient. So we need to understand that the stress that we're speaking about here encompasses many areas of our work and home life dynamic. And it might not only be a specific focal point. So that is an important area for us to look at in terms of how our physiology is impacted during a high stress moment at work. And if that high stress moment is prolonged in that workspace, that good stress we're feeling, that pump, that motivation to work on the patient can over time also impact on our own thinking and own reasoning if we are not able to balance all that out with us and we're not aware and self-aware enough about that. If we then look at the physical signs of stress in terms of moving from short to medium to long term, and there's a host of unexpected physical symptoms, which we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into that now. But we know that in many cases within the workspace, a lot of our challenges are brought about by work-related stress. A lot of our stresses lead us into medical conditions, which then lead us to leading further medical care, where we might not sometimes be dealing with the reason why we're having the physical complaint. And that's also important for us as practitioners and as people who are involved in medicine to have a deeper understanding of how this will affect us in our judgment, both in the work and the home space, and be aware that we need to be clear in terms of this, that we don't become a statistic. Those of us who've been in the profession for many years have lost colleagues over the years as a result of both either chronic medical conditions or as a result of other challenges within the workspace. And we need to focus, and as we've reflected in the past on the last two sessions, we need to focus that self-care back on ourselves, and we need to focus that self-care back on our colleagues and make sure that we look after not only ourselves, but the people around us. And this presentation and this block of presentations we've done, I'm hoping, is going to start giving a lot of us pause for thought in terms of how we care for the people around us within our workspace. Excuse me. So we need to look at these unexpected physical symptoms of PTSD. And if we look and reflect at that graphic on the board, on your screen, we can see that the importance of that we understand where and how these things occur, how our body is affected by this dynamic. Most of us will look at that and relate to how we are in the workspace, and we're finding at times that we're having issues with weight gain. We're having issues with digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome. We're having challenges for those of us who also exercise as well and are working. We might find that sometimes we don't have the ability to build muscle as well as we used to, and to maintain levels of fitness and energy as well. And all of those trigger back to the stress that we are encountering in the workspace, and the stress of both acute and chronic, as we've reflected. And it's important that we start to do a deep dive into that. There's a lot of really great articles that have been written recently about really just the simple thing of how we gain weight, and particularly how we gain weight around our midline area, and becoming a little bit more pear-shaped. And that's a lot of that can also kick back to stress in terms of the cortisol, the hormone that's released during times of stress, can have a significant impact on weight gain and the storage of fat in our bodies. Because research has shown that high cortisol levels are closely linked to the relocation of fat to the stomach area, which we also sometimes refer to as visceral fat. And that is because fat cells in the stomach have 4 more times cortisol receptors, my apologies, cortisol receptors compared to fat cells in other parts of the body. So during times of stress, our eating patterns are also affected, and that can then further trigger and add more abdominal fat. And as we know, abdominal fat, visceral fat, is a key risk factor in a number of medical conditions, both cardiac and diabetic and hypertensive related. So that ties in to how this can impact us, our physiology, our levels of strength, our levels of endurance, and that will further affect our ability to practice our profession professionally. It can affect our judgment. And just by small things like that, over time, these prolonged exposures to these unbalanced levels of hormones can cause a lot of physical problems. And it's important that we begin to understand that. And it's important that we focus on how we can begin to be more aware and be more gentle with ourselves, and at the same time also get a deeper understanding of how we need to tailor our lifestyle and tailor what we're doing to be able to find this balance between, in terms of stress, the physical symptoms of PTSD and stress, the chronic challenges faced with that, and be aware of it, and not, it'll make us more self-aware now because we have the knowledge, which will then help us to balance these challenges out better. So that's one of the areas that we can really start to make a significant difference in our own mental and physical health space by having a deep dive into the various symptoms that we're seeing on the infographic there, and go and have a look at those, and look at your own lifestyle and your own physical health, and sit and do a deep analysis for yourself in terms of that. Are some of these physical manifestations that you're seeing, are they a result of your stress in the workplace, the inability to find a decent work-life balance, and also prolonged chronic stress that's built up? And then also further to that, in terms of within your workspace? Are you able to still function at the way that you were functioning maybe 4 or 5 years ago? And have a deep moment of reflection and see where you can start to make a difference within your own mental health space, which will then impact on an improved physical outcome for yourself as well. So that's just a slightly more deeper dive into the physical impact of mental and emotional trauma in terms of our appetite regulation. Sometimes we're then using emotional eating as a coping mechanism. And generally, if we're using emotional eating as a coping mechanism, we're not sitting down to have a healthy meal, but we're sitting down and having a junk food meal or a packet of crisps or a slab of chocolate or stopping and getting some fast food, as opposed to, because we're wanting that quick sugar fix from an emotional eating point of view. And that then affects our sleep, weight gain, metabolic changes and fat storage, as I've said, and the cycle continues. So to break the cycle, we need to look within those points 1, 2, 3, and 4, where we can start to make changes in that, where we can start to look at the cognitive processes that we need to go through, the self-regulation that we need to look at in terms of how we can focus that to have a better, well-rounded headspace and a better, well-rounded health space within our own life. So, because they all impact on each other. I know for myself that I do sometimes tend to emotionally eat, and I do know that when I do that, I don't have as great a sleep as I normally do. Thankfully, my Garmin tells me when I'm not sleeping well, but that doesn't necessarily always get me out of the cycle. So we need to make a mental switch to do that we need to get into a mental switch to break through those dynamics. So how do we go about doing this? How do we go about working through these dynamics and changes? I suppose one of the ways is, a screaming song is good to know in case you need to scream. I'm just saying. So think about that now. What's your fave screaming song that you can just go out there and shout and scream and headbang to? Or if one song isn't enough, do you have a screaming playlist where you can go put your headphones on and just clear the headspace? Just find a way to vent and clear your mind to do that. It would be appropriate to not play your screaming song in the work environment or around your patients, but rather do it in a more private space. So that's the smiley faces there, bringing a little bit of humor into where we are now, because that is also an important aspect of where we need to move our headspace into. So coming back to a little bit more of a deeper reality dive now. We spoke about compassion satisfaction and compassion fatigue the last time we met. And coming back to the compassion satisfaction part, we spoke that begins with self-acceptance. We said that true compassion emerges not from perfection, but from a gentle, honest relationship with our own human experience, with your experience, by holding yourself with kindness, by learning to be kind to yourself, by learning to appreciate and love the space that you are in. And if you're battling to do that, if you're battling to be kind to yourself, if you're battling to love the space that you're in and love yourself, then that would be a pause for you to sit and reflect and think about what you need to do to be able to be in that space where you can be kind to yourself and when you can love yourself. And that's where you might need to look at outside assistance, outside help, to work over these challenges that you're dealing with. And when we really look at compassion satisfaction in its truest altruistic form, then we're looking at it reflecting on the sense of pleasure, accomplishment, and fulfillment derived from helping others and witnessing positive outcomes. So it can be thought of as the rewards of caregiving. And that's when we're treating patients. If we are at that level where we are still getting that pleasure, that accomplishment, that fulfillment, that's what we want him to, the reward we get for what we're doing as a caregiver. But at the same time, we need to be caring for ourselves. So we might get still the pleasure and the satisfaction when we're treating patients. But now let's think of ourselves as a patient and make sure that we get that same pleasure and sense of accomplishment when we can look inwards and see how we can help ourselves and to improve our self-worth. So learning from and understanding the traumatization that we've gone through, but we can then move this into a vicarious, positive transformation, where we can begin to have a serious, sincere discussion with ourselves. And if one battles to have that discussion with yourself on your own, in your own headspace, then it would be important for you to start finding a space you can do that, in a safe space, in a place where you feel safe, that you can reflect with a therapist, a colleague, a counselor, a coach, a mentor, where you can do that. Because that, for me, is the critical part of this dynamic, is that, which is why we're doing this, is because as much as we like to think that we can do this journey alone, we really can't. And that's a challenge for us in our profession, because we are so used to working alone. We're so used to working, either if you're doing remote work, you're just working on your own, or if you're doing response work, you're generally working with a colleague. And we are so used to working alone, and we're so used to trying to think alone. But we can't always do that. We need to focus on how we can do this journey with the help of other people. And reaching out for help is a sign of growth. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of growth. It's a sign of strength, and it's a sign of your mental understanding that you need to be able to be ask for help. It takes courage. It takes strength to do that, and that strength is within all of us. We just need to learn to accept that that's how we need to process and progress. To have somebody to bounce ideas off, to reflect back with, in a safe space where you know that is kept in confidence, even if it's a friend that you have a good relationship with, a good colleague that you've known for years, and that you have somebody to do that with, in a safe workspace and in a safe home life space as well. So finding this journey, this balance, and there is no magic bullet to the compassion, satisfaction, and the journey of a work-life balance. There is no magic bullet. As I've said again and again, self-care is the key in this process. And if we can start to do that, we can then start to get to a deeper level of understanding of how we can develop the 3 dimensions of stress: the emotional exhaustion, the depersonalization, and the reduced personal accomplishment. We can start to work through those. And I guarantee you, every single one of us sitting here, intellectually, we know this. We know what needs to be done. We know how we can get out of our headspace, but we don't always know how. And also, very importantly, it's important that we look at the areas I mentioned there. So in terms of the depersonalization, emotional exhaustion, and reduced personal accomplishment. If we look at our own industry, because that's where we're reflecting back on, if we look at what the literature says, what foundations need to be laid to maintain a work-life balance, we will see why it's so difficult if we look at our own workspace. and that is most of us, I shouldn't say me anymore, but most of the practitioners still working out there is they're working overtime or they're working more than one job sometimes. Why are they doing that? Because the salaries are so poor within most companies. So staff are getting burnt out because they're working their shifts, and then when they're off duty, they're doing standbys, they're doing events, they're doing OT elsewhere to earn a decent living. And this is where companies and management need to step up and take accountability and care of their staff seriously. And there are many managers in this listening in, and there are senior people listening in, and we need to look not only at the profession, but we need to look at the way we are forcing people to earn a living. And then in various other areas, if one looks at the studies and the stats, and in terms of those three key areas, from a gender perspective, men seem to battle more with that than women. But within our workspace, I think it's pretty similar at times, because and let's be true about this, that this has for many years been a male-dominated environment for many years, and I've known and worked with many women in the profession, and they took hard knocks to get where they got to in the profession. So I think within our space, we also need to start to look seriously at the bias in the profession, because that also affects your work-life balance. Because it's difficult to have a work-life balance when you're working in a career that you actually have wanted to do your whole life, to look after other people, to work in emergency medicine, to become a paramedic, and then to deal with challenges that are not, that you weren't expecting. And yes, I agree, Danielle, I agree. The bias has gotten a lot better, but it's still there, and we still need to be aware of it. And we still need to put our bias in our back pocket and not let it affect us of how we're working. And Karen, as you're asking in terms of depersonalization, the depersonalization is slow and gradual within a workspace where we are not always respected for who we are, for our individuality and our work ethic. But the drive within the corporate workspace is such that we're not seen as a practitioner who is doing their best to work and care for patients, but we are forced to drive harder and harder to just keep the patients coming in. We don't then have a chance to focus on patient care, and we don't then have a chance to give the best care that we can give to that patient. And then we pretty much are losing our personality, we're losing our identity. And I know these are hard discussion points to look at, and there are no quick fixes, there are no easy answers, but doing what we're doing now, talking about it, education through workshops with your colleagues, and trying to find a balance. And also, most of us in these working environments, and yeah, I can speak for myself, because of the nature of the work and the nature of where I've had to work over the years, my home life over the years was a mess. And going home wasn't always a place which was a safe space. Because of this work-life balance, because I was working so much and working so hard, and didn't really have a chance, and this is a failing on my part, not a failing on the system per se, but to actually calcate and cultivate a balanced home life. And so I can reflect back, and if I can give advice to people about the mistakes that I've made in the profession and be honest about my mistakes, it can help other people in a workspace as well. And that's what this is all about as well, for us to share, those of us who've been in the profession, to share with the new generation coming in, to not make the mistakes that we made, to be able to grow beyond that. Because multiple studies have shown that pre and post organizational interventions, where positive strategies in promoting well-being within the workspace, if they are implemented, they have shown promise. So, and pre and post organizational interventions, those do not come from the staff themselves. Those come and would be driven by management, HR, and that structure to make sure that we're looking at these implementations and strategies to look after the staff. Because realistically, if we reflect back, the staff that are out there working in ambulances, in RVs, or be it for government or for private, they are the advert for that vehicle that they are driving. They are the brand. The brand is the person, is the practitioner. And we need to look after the practitioner to value the brand, which is going to help the patient. Often, far too often, we're putting the brand above the practitioner and the patient, which is also depersonalizing that individual and that practitioner. So if we look at the signs of an imbalanced lifestyle, so we're looking at physical and mental exhaustion. We've all been there. Neglected relationships. We've all been there. Poor physical health, which we've spoken about. Overwhelming stress and anxiety, lack of personal fulfillment, which really comes about because we're just being pushed too hard, or in some cases, because from a training point of view, we haven't been given the right tools sometimes from a training perspective to be able to do what we need to do. And then a strained work performance where we're running on high call volumes and we're not letting people have a chance to actually have a downtime between call outs. And that's once again because we're running not enough crews sometimes on some shifts. If you think of the workload that the government ambulances and the government RVs are running it, it's very high, and there's no downtime, there's no rest time at all on a shift. So how can we address these challenges and these issues? So we as individuals need to learn to set clear boundaries between work and personal life. When we're at work, we're at work. When we leave work, we should be able to put that aside and move into a home space where we have dedicated, uninterrupted time, where we can focus on our personal life, on our hobbies and our relationships, so that we can do that. And that downtime should be respected by our employees. We definitely need to seek support. We need to learn to delegate tasks as well and ask for help when needed. Because if we don't ask, we're not looking after ourselves. So whether we're reaching out for support to alleviate some of the pressures and responsibilities within a workspace or in a home personal space, we need to start doing that as part of our own self-care. And we need to make self-care a non-negotiable part of our routine. We need to prioritize activities in a week or in a cycle where we can nourish our body and our mind through exercise, Meditation, however you find the time to meditate. For me, running in the mountains is meditation. Some people, meditation might be yoga. It might be um, uh, just actual sitting down, meditating, and just sitting and being in nature and just listening to the birds. So you need to find time to feed your body and your mind, and that's important that we need to do that. I found that out very late in life in EMS. Although I did start my career later than some, and I came in with a far more nuanced approach into it. But you get sucked into it because it is a very addictive profession. It's also a very gratifying profession, but it can also be a really crunching, destroying profession. So we need to find time to nourish our body. We need to find time to nourish our mind. And that's on you. You need to make that time for self-care. And by doing that, you need to learn to say no at times. And we need to learn to say no to commitments that don't align with our priorities or values. Because if we say no to that thing that is not of value to us, it means we can say yes to something that is more important. So that's what we need to look at. We need to see how we can make it work for us. What works for me might not work for you, but you need to work out and reflect and reassess regularly. Reassess and evaluate your life and reassess your priorities. Are you spending your time and energy on what truly matters? And make adjustments to create a more balanced and fulfilling lifestyle. Now, how do we do that? So once again, there's no quick fix, there's no easy answer, but we need a support network around us. We need family and friends who understand the stresses that we have. We need colleagues and mentors where we can build relationships with like-minded people, where we can all be in a quest for a good work-life balance. These colleagues and mentors that we turn to and provide professional advice, reflect back on experiences, offer guidance, how you can manage your time better. Learn to engage with colleagues who have similar goals that you have and values that you have, so that you can create and foster a positive work environment. And also then foster collaboration in this positive work environment. Online communities and social media can also definitely help in this digital age. There are positive social media communities out there, positive groups that you can be a part of. Join groups and forums that will provide you an opportunity to seek advice, share experiences, reflect and learn from others. And it's also very important that if you move into that sort of space, to prioritize face-to-face connections as well, and not just text or voice message connections. It is important, and even if the face-to-face is via Zoom or Teams or WhatsApp video, it's important to have a connection like that. Seeking out professional organizations, networking events, where you can begin to see other people connecting with other ideas, other diverse intellectual inputs. I mean, the power of supportive networks cannot be understated enough. And then we might even need additional guidance and support from professionals who specialize in work-life balance, engaging in mentors and professional coaches who can provide personalized advice and strategies tailored to your specific needs. And also work on areas to identify improvement specifically in effective time management techniques. And then also offer accountability to ensure that you stay on track. Because that's also important. Having somebody just kind of reach out and ping you and say, how's it going, buddy? You said you were going to get onto this week and do that. How's it going with that? Have you hit your targets, whatever they might have been? So I work in a coaching space, and I'm coaching one or two people who are working on fitness targets, and I track them on Strava. I ping them, I give them kudos, and I send them a WhatsApp when I see they've done something great. And that's the sort of relationship that you need to find, that you can develop with somebody who would then be there to help, guide, assist, coach, and nudge, and say, "Hey, come, let's get back on track. You're letting it slip this week. What's happened? What's happened? Why are you not in a good space this week?" And that's how you can start surrounding yourself with positive influences, positive reflections, and and start looking at your own self-care. We spoke about empathy last time we spoke as well, and we spoke about the cognitive and affective. And we also spoke that in terms of being empathetic and how we can focus on helping people and letting people help us. And we spoke about the difference bit in terms of if somebody tries to tell us that they want to solve the problem for us. Because if we're working with somebody, and somebody comes to us for help, and if we are being truly empathetic with that person, then we should be showing an interest in them. And we shouldn't be saying to them, if they come to us for help, and saying, "Let me help yourself solve your problem." Or we have somebody knock on our door and ask for help. If you're a manager and the person walks in and they say, "Listen, Mike, I've got this problem, I've got this challenge, and I'm not really sure." And because I'm now being a good time manager, and now because I'm the manager and I'm the boss, I'll interrupt them, and I'll say, "Listen, what you need to do is you need to go out and do this, do that, and that, and that, and then it's all done and dusted. Have you got that?" And the guy will say, "Yeah," and he leaves. You haven't helped him solve the problem, because he more than likely knows the answer. And in the hidden message, by me saying that to somebody who comes into my office, I'm pretty much saying to this guy, "Listen, you don't really know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing. So this is how you're going to do it. I'm smarter than you. That's why I'm here." And there's a name for that. It's arrogance. It's not being smart. It's not being kind. It's not being compassionate. So if you want to show empathy, learn how to ask, take an interest in the other person, learn to listen to them. So empathy requires brain, heart, and ears. So we need to, at most times, just listen. So sitting down and applying and simply being with another person without holding judgment, to offering solutions, holding space for them, let them find the solution. In most cases, people know the solution. So, and you need to help them to find that solution themselves. Let them think about it, work with them. That takes time in a workspace, but it builds trust, and it builds a team, it builds cohesiveness, and it builds a workspace where people know that they are trusted. It builds a workspace where people know they are valued. And that's what we need to look at, of how we can learn to value our colleagues, value our staff, value people around us. And that would be true in a home space as well, within a personal relationship space as well. Value the people around you, who are close to you, who you treasure. Value them. So habits for the heart and head. Learn to listen. Be comfortable saying no. Practice self-awareness. And when we say listening, as you're saying, really, really listen. So there's an excellent book called Time to Think by Nancy Klein, which is an amazing book to read, which will teach you how to listen, how to really listen. Because often when we're in a space, and I'll challenge you all to answer this yourself or post a message in the chat box. When you're having a discussion with somebody and they're chatting to you, are you listening to what they're saying, or have you already prepared an answer to what you want to say before they finish saying? So the moment they're finished, you can chip in with your point. What we should be doing, if we're really listening, is listen to what they are saying, feel what they are saying, take in what they are saying, and then reflect back in an informed way that you've heard what they've said, and you are then being aware of what they are saying before you give your opinion or before you just chip in with your answer. Because we are so eager to give our opinion of what's being said without waiting to hear what they are saying. And that is so true of a rushed workspace as well, because time is critical. I've got so much to do, I don't have enough time. But if we take time to work with people around us, we'll be amazed at how often people will be willing to help us to take a load off our shoulders as we take a load off theirs. So what we need is grounded, emotionally intelligent leaders, EQ leaders. And that's what we need. So and to do that, we need to practice our own self-awareness. Self-awareness builds an emotional EQ. The name of the book by Nancy Klein, it's called Time to Think. I'll post it later in the chat box. And what we need to do, we need to avoid toxicity. And I'm sure in your own headspace now, you can already be thinking of people that you've worked with who lack the emotional intelligence to actually be in the position that they are. So we need to be emotionally intelligent. We need to aspire to be emotionally intelligent. Look, and as a manager, as a leader, we need to deal with a wide variety of people and situations, but we also need to learn to not be overly negative. We need to learn to use discernment and leverage our judgment. And also at the same time, we have the right to work out how we can serve our staff, our organization, our company in a healthy way, and learn to recognize toxicity and then mindfully separate that yourself from that so that it doesn't impact on you. So I said, use mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness encompasses two key ingredients: awareness and acceptance. Awareness is the knowledge and ability to focus attention on your own experiences, such as the experience of this present moment. So your awareness now in this space, what you are experiencing, what you are understanding, and then the acceptance part is the ability to observe and accept the streams of thought that are coming out now, not to judge them, not to avoid them, but to observe and accept and take time to reflect on them. So the purpose of being mindful is that we learn to look at our own consciousness, our own identity. We're practicing our own self-empathy. We're tuning in to ourselves. We're tuning into where our headspace is. We're looking at how are we feeling right now? How can we, in that space, how can we now just peacefully, mentally, rationally, and relationally just understand where we are? So our mind is open, we're paying attention, we're present in this space. We're aware, we're accepting, based on that, and if we're in that space, we can then start to tune in and then start to give feedback. So we're observing our own thoughts and feelings without judging them as being good or bad. So if you're listening to what I'm saying now and you're taking it in, not judging what I'm saying as being good or bad, which it could be either of the two, but allowing yourself time to reflect, where you can then get your head into a space to tune your mind into where what I'm saying, to then see how this can aid or abet, assist, or not be needed in your space. But give yourself the time to think through that. And this would be true in many areas of our life, that we need to be able to be in this mindful space. Tune into our own inner guidance, follow our own intuition, and then see how this works. The emergence of mindfulness is fairly new to Western culture. It's deeply steeped in Buddhism and Zen Buddhism, but in the 1970s, a professor in the University of Massachusetts developed a program called mindful-based stress reduction, which is actually now been shown to be an excellent tool to treat chronic pain. So merely by the way that you can adjust your thinking and how you start to look inward at yourself and look at positive mindful-based therapies, we can start to heal our own emotional state in our own emotional mind space. And that's a radical thought on its own. So, radical empathy, actively striving to understand the feelings of others and creating a better world based on that understanding. And that's what our profession needs, because all of us, we are all here because we care. We're all here because we want to make a difference. We're all here because we are passionate about a profession. We're all here because we are passionate about learning. And that's what our profession needs. They need you. So there's 6 steps to be radically empathetic. The willingness to be vulnerable, being here, being part of this process, being willing to be part of this process we're going through now. Is tick, that box is ticked. Being grounded in who you are. That's a process that you're going to have to work through by practicing mindfulness. Opening yourself to the experience of others, learning to speak to others, learning to reflect to others. Practicing empathy, we've been discussing about that. Take action in your own life and your own workspace. Create change in your own life, in your own headspace. Build trust with those around you. That's what we can do to make significant changes to our own life space. Because all of us, every single one of us sitting here, I don't think any of you would say that you wouldn't want to create a better workspace, that you wouldn't want to create a better home space, that you wouldn't want to create a better community. So we all strive for radical empathy. I just don't think we always know how. And this is the part of this process, is the how. Okay, we spoke last time that we throw a pebble in the pond and that ripple can become a tsunami. This is our profession. This is your profession. This is your future. This is your life. Be the change you want to see in the world around you. Okay, be the change you want to see in your profession. Be the change you want to see in your space. Okay, so that's it from me for today, but we're going to be having a closeout session in July, and then we'll be looking at more resources, reading materials, opportunities for additional support platforms. The YouTube, the Coughing Cases YouTube channel, once this presentation is uploaded, for welcome to comment on there. And if anybody wants to reach out to me for any other books or reading materials, I'm happy to for that as well. Thank you again for your time. Thank you again for the opportunity, Caleb and Coughing Cases team. It's much appreciative of it. Thank you. Open for questions and discussions now as well. If there's anything, if I haven't answered anything, that's in the chat box.
Thank you, Mike. That was an awesome presentation. I see there is a hand up, so I think let's go to that hand.
Sorry, Elmarie. Yes, question. You want to, Elmarie, just type in the chat box if you can.
Mike, while we're waiting for Elmarie just to pop a question in the chat box, I just wanted to, there were a few comments, a lot of thanks, a lot of comments around the bias and sort of things. What I did want to just bring up is there's this one comment from Danielle, and Danielle always brings us some really cool comments just around, it's really concerning when staff members or colleagues don't want to speak at all. Do you have any sort of advice or approaches that we could use to engage somebody who's really having a hard time and is withdrawing?
Oh, okay. That's a tough one. Yeah, I suppose in terms of that, if there's a colleague that just won't talk or just is withdrawing completely, and they're not willing to listen to anybody, then I suppose if there maybe one can ask a very close personal friend if they know they have one, to ask them if they need help or a safe space. Often people would feel threatened to speak out, particularly in the EMS workspace. Sometimes seen as a sign of weakness. So I would find some way to find a chink in the armor, to have a door open, even if you speak to them about something just arbitrarily, just get them talking about something, whatever they're passionate about. So if there's a colleague who you know is really battling and is challenged about something, don't speak to them about their challenges or their battles. Maybe try and find a positive thing to speak to them about, and just see that you just want to talk to them about life in general, as opposed to what they might be dealing with, and learn to just be with them and hold space for them, as opposed to wanting to immediately dive in and discuss the challenge that they're dealing with. I know that might not even work either. It might not be the answer, but for me, that would make the most rational sense, to not try to even talk about what's bothering them. Just talk to them as a person about life and the rugby game or the football game, or if they're a Man United supporter, why are they still a Man United supporter? Because it doesn't make sense. That sort of stuff. Something that'll break through to them, a bit of humor, something just to be a human and not to be anything other than that.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I don't see any typing from Elmarie. Elmarie, do you want to try again and see if you can unmute?
Oh, success. And my message just went through. This is such a cool topic. Thank you so much. But I'll leave you to read that and have some comments. That's amazing. Thanks, guys, for this.
Awesome. Thanks, Elmarie, for sharing your comment. So the question is, it's quite challenging. Sometimes we can't avoid toxicity. What are some of the tools in practice in the scenarios where there is a toxic person that disrupts the process, understanding that it likely comes from a place of pain or discomfort?
Yeah, I would reflect back what I just said earlier, Marie. I mean, yes, there are many toxic people, and I suppose finding out why they're toxic is not going to be important as well. I mean, just they're in a toxic space because they're in a place of pain. I could reflect. I was stuck out the country for 14 months working COVID, and I was on a project working flat out through multiple pandemics, outbreaks. I hadn't been home for 10 months and I'd been working flat out and nonstop. I was burnt out. I was a horrible person to be around, and I was leading the team. And new team members were flying in the whole time to relieve us. A new manager arrived to help me, and I was a horrible person in a horrible space. And the new manager became a friend. He didn't take me on when I lost my temper. He didn't take me on when I slammed the door, or when I even used foul language in a meeting because I was just so burnt out. But he held space. And I think that's all we can do. Sorry.
Yeah, really nice answer. Brendan. Brendan, you can go ahead.
Is Richard able to unmute in the meantime if Brendan's battling?
Yeah, let's go to Richard if you can. Might be a me issue. Let me see if I can fix it. Brendan, you should be able to open now.
Yeah,
Or
good
Richard.
morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Richard.
Yes.
Brilliant. Very good morning. Thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. I touched upon a couple of things. I just find it very difficult sometimes, especially I'm sure other people do too. When you have colleagues that don't talk, or you have, let's just put it, bad people or manipulative people in the workspace that always, no matter how you try and explain things, they always have to be right. I just want to know if you have any advice on how to cope with that, or if you can maybe tell me a book by someone that would be a worthwhile read. But thanks again for the talk. It was very good.
Yeah, there's another book sitting on my desk here next to me. It's called the Trauma Informed Coach, which is a book I'm working through as well, which is it gives us the skills to support people who are suffering from past traumas, and how we can go about helping them and finding the skills and the tools to do that. Because there's no one simple tool or one simple way. And sometimes there is no easy way at all. And so I find this book really helpful to give me a different perspective on things at times. I'll type it up in the chat box here. Let me see, where's my chat box? Where's the chat box? Okay, I can't type it in at the moment. But the book's called The Trauma Informed Coach, and the author is Joanna Harper.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Caleb.
Brendan, your hand is still up. I don't know if you want to give it another bash.
Yes, thank you, Mike, Hazard, and the rest of the panel. Thank you very much for this. The one question I've got is, us old guys, I'm not sure the young guys in that will also know, it's difficult to speak as into where do you start? If you need help, where do you start? How do you start the conversation with a psychologist or a mentor or a counselor, therapist? It's very difficult to know that you need the assistance, but you don't know how to speak. You don't know what to bring up. You don't know what to say to the person. How would you go about knowing that you need help and then knowing where to start or how to start the conversation?
Well, for someone who's been on both sides of the table, being in therapy and now also working as a coach, the mere fact that the person has reached out means that they want to talk. And then once again, finding the tools as a person who's a mentor or a coach would be to look for the levers and the triggers of the person. And it's really getting a grasp of where the person is at the moment in their life, finding out what is their current reality. And their current reality doesn't have to be based on work. It could be based on anything. So if somebody has to say, what is your current reality at the moment? What is your current situation? What is where's your head at the moment? And if you look at your current reality and you're not happy with it, where do you think you would like your reality to be? So, and that's really moving into, because there's a whole lot of mnemonics that we use in the coaching mentor space, and a lot of those are really just trying to find out. I mean, if somebody had set up an appointment with me, the mere fact that they've set up an appointment with me means that they want to talk about something. We need to find out what, and the what is part of the why as to why they're there, and that's really because there's something in their current reality that they're not happy with, or there's something in the current reality that they want to improve on. So yeah. It's difficult to give a clinical answer that hits all the markers on that, Brendan, but there are a good therapist, a good psychologist, a good psychiatrist will be able to work you into that space, or that person into that space to talk.
Thanks, Mike. And another point that I know many people have brought up is they find it difficult to speak to someone that doesn't know the field. How important is it to speak to someone that actually understands what we do, the long hours, and being able to communicate with a method that they can understand? They know what it's like to take a baby from a bush that's being crushed by a car. They've got no idea of that kind of exposure. And it's important to find someone, and we've spoken it from the Pretoria days and everything, that's the one thing that they struggle to find, is to find someone that they can speak to that can actually understand the job, what we do.
That's one of those like yes, no, maybe, but answers. Sometimes all the times I've been in therapy, and I agree with the point that, just feeding back to this now, Anthony said that all personnel should see therapists. I've been in and out of therapy, and all my therapists, not one of them have been involved in the profession, and I've found them helpful. But we also need to remember that if one goes to see a therapist, not every therapist gels with every patient, and not every patient gels with every therapist. And you as a person, if you're reaching out for somebody for help, or if you're reaching out to see a therapist, go go to the therapist on the understanding that this isn't going to be your therapist for life or even for this moment. You might go to them, have a session, and realize at that point in time after, and it would be great to be honest with the therapist whether it's actually working or not. And most astute therapists will pick up if it's working or not as well. And they would then be able to say, listen, I don't think I'm the right person for you, but I can refer you to somebody who would be the right person for you. So I think at times we think that we have to have somebody who's been in the business. I've found sometimes it's better that I don't talk to somebody who's in the business, but that's my headspace. And that's for me. I've had 3 or 4 therapists in my career, and now I don't have a therapist. I have a number of close confidants who I've got to learn and know and love over the years that I can reflect back to. But so I think there's no definitive.
Mike, Caleb, last question. You've got a person that says they want to speak to someone. They admit to you they need help. But when you try help them, when you say, shouldn't you speak to a psychologist or see a therapist, and they say yes, and as soon as you try help them, they withdraw. Is there a way of trying to break through to that person or saying, you said yes, you said you need the help, you've identified that you need the help, but they're not willing to go forward? Is there a way to try break that barrier down, that they actually seek the help that they are requesting?
Well, I suppose that the important thing would be to ask them, why are you saying no? But don't ask it in a way that comes across that direct. Many people, shouldn't say many people, let's just say people sometimes feel that seeing a therapist is an admission that they can't do their job, or that they're not strong enough, that they're weak, or that, and so they would want help, but when it comes to the point that they are offered help, they back down. So my advice would be to find, once again, get into a space where you can just have a discussion with the person outside of work over a cup of coffee, and talk about something not related to anything about why they want to see a therapist. We need to get into people's spaces where we can be on an emotional level with them. And if that person is feeling vulnerable, then sit there and be vulnerable with them. Hold space with them. I mean, if somebody's sitting in a hole and you walk past and the guy says, look, I'm in a hole, I'm stuck, please help me. And you say, oh, geez, it's a bit crappy down in the hole, buddy. Sorry, I mean, it's dark, it's wet. Let me go see what I can do for you. And you walk away. Whereas what you should do is get down in the hole, but make sure you can get out the hole. Don't get in the hole. Get out, get down in the hole and sit with the person and say, let's get out of this hole together.
So it's basically like walking, you greet the person, you walk along a path with them. As you're walking along the path, you start the conversation. And as you're going along, you can help them with obstacles and then maybe direct them into a greener pasture or a quiet river for being mindful. And then they can make their decision.
They'll more than likely find the green pasture and the quiet river on their own if they just have somebody there to be by their side. And if the person is astute enough to know that he or she needs help, that person would be astute enough to realize that when you're holding space in a mindful, empathetic space, that's non-confrontational, they would be relaxed. And that's what you just need, is to get them in a space where they can lower their barriers. We all have barriers, and they need to just be in that space to be able to lower their barriers. And that will only happen in a safe, neutral, non-confrontational space where they can just be.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike.
I mean, and all of us think, Vincent made a comment there that we all iron giants, and we're not. None of us are. I mean, if any one of us thinks that we can do this alone, that we don't need help, that we don't need a colleague, that we don't need to debrief, then they're just being absolutely arrogant, and they are causing harm to people around them and to their own patients. Because we're not being fair to people around us and our patients. That's just some like assessment of that, which is maybe not fair, but we cannot afford to be arrogant in this space, to think that we don't need to have people around us who care and help for us.
Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate it.
And your pleasure, Brendan. Take care.
Thanks, Mike. I think some really cool questions have come through on the chat as well. So I'm just going to entertain sort of one or two of them so that we don't run too far over time. So the first one that I saw that really piqued my interest is, what are your thoughts on exercise for PTSD?
It works for me. It's great. I mean, what kept me sane for 14 months out the country was that I could go running in the Saudi desert. That kept me sane. Every Friday I would go for a long run. It was the Sunday, so I would go for a long run out the gate and just run in the desert for 2 hours to clear my head. So exercise has always been my go-to for relaxing, and when I've always been at home, I always go running in the mountains. It's my happy space where I can be. So, and for some people it might be whatever the form of exercise is, be it, I saw somebody working there, they're doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and could be, weightlifting, swimming, running, cycling, whatever. It releases all the happy endorphins that we need, and even some of the happy cannabinoids that we need, which is also shown as well. So.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about suffering physically when you're struggling with something mentally. Definitely takes some of the pressure off.
Yeah, it does.
There's another question, and this is from Isaac, who's asking that as someone in a leadership role, he often struggles to find ways to boost staff morale, but is also struggling himself, just in terms of motivation and emotional energy at the same time. His question is, how can he effectively support and uplift his team without neglecting his own well-being or burning out further?
My advice to him would be to focus on himself first. If he focuses on himself, he'll then be able to focus on others far more easier. It's difficult to fix the others who are broken when you're broken and you're not able to work from a happy, safe, unbroken space. It's very, very difficult. So I would encourage him to work on himself, and by working on himself, he will find it'll become naturally easier to work on others.
I also like these comments from Anthony, I think, speaking about debriefing and discussions. So just sort of informal team debriefing and sort of hot debriefing, sharing some experiences with your team. That might be a really good way to sort of start those conversations. I know that in our space, it really has changed the way that we speak to each other and about each other. And it really creates the space for a little bit of safety in terms of when you debrief with a team who understand exactly what you're going through, they seem to be a lot more supportive of you than you would ever be of yourself, even if there have been errors and disasters that have happened. So debriefing, I think, is a fantastic way, but it must obviously be run in a way that creates safety for the system rather than sort of putting people into high-risk environments.
And I like Julie's comment there as well, which really reflects back to what we were saying, that reality is counselling doesn't start just bluntly off the bat. It focuses on building a safe space, a trusted space, and only then do you actually find the time to open up once you're in that space. So
and it's a relationship, right?
Yeah, people want to talk, but they need to know it's safe. And sometimes some of us will walk in and we'll know it's safe immediately. Others walk in and they sit down, and that safe space will take maybe 2 or 3 or 4 sessions to actually get to them to be in a safe space. We all reflect and work differently on the challenges we faced.
I think it's also really important that if you are going to take yourself to therapy, that which we should all be, I think, in therapy at some point and throughout our lives, but we should be really open to the fact that it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be difficult conversations. And you kind of need to go there with the mindset that you're only going to get out what you put in. And that means you're going to need to put in all that hard work and have those conversations and open it up. Otherwise, you're just paying someone to listen to your stories that you tell yourself. And that's not really helpful.
Now, therapy isn't recounting war stories. Therapy is actually ripping off the band-aid, see what's lying underneath, and then working on actually healing those wounds.
100%. I see the comments have sort of stopped, and I think there may be a few comments that we missed. If you feel really that your comment has been missed and you really would like to get your point across, please just pop your hand up and share it with us in person. While we wait for some hands, if there are some that we have missed, we're just going to say thank you.
Thanks for all the book links that have been sent and the web links and so on. There's so much out there to where you can garner more information and support. And as I said, if people want to reach out to me, ping me privately because they want to get some information. I'm happy to reflect back privately as well if people want to as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Mike. And then don't forget on the Coffee and Cases register, there is a link to just sign up as a mentor or a mentee if you feel like joining the team and having these conversations a little bit more often. We would very much like to have you.
Thank you again.
Cool. It doesn't look like we have too many more questions. So thank you, Mike, so much for your time and the time in putting together your presentation and also just the thoughts that you've shared with us. I think really valuable, and there's been some really good feedback already.